And those are just 3 examples of transitions that in our 63-year company have changed for us and made us to where we can still occupy, the 85,000 square feet. We have not grown, but we're still here. All these transitions have kept us here. We've been able to retain the jobs that we had and shift our business into all of these diversified areas so that we can maintain what we have. On the horizon, we have certain things that we're just on the verge of a couple years. Next year, probably not next year, we'll see a good growth opportunity with 2 or 3 of our product offerings kicking off. But the following year, we're looking at opportunities where we have 7 acres behind the last of these buildings, and we're going to be knocking down trees and putting up buildings in that 7 acres because we're going to need a lot of real estate, we're going to have a lot of square footage, and we're going to need a lot more people. So we're very excited about our transitions and what that does to the history and the livelihood of our future.
Okay, great. Enough. We have time now for our second company, or would you like to do that at another?
No, let's do a brief second.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ted. That's really helpful insight, and appreciate that. We've packed a lot into this time, and so I know we're running just a little bit over, but I want to make sure we get this information out to you as well. We have with us today Andy Platt, who is he's the Director of Process Improvement at Personics, which is an Indianapolis subsidiary of Fiserv, talking about the credit crunch and so forth, which is a Fortune 500 banking transaction company. Personics provides print and mail business communication between clients and their customers. The product line includes Visa, MasterCard branded products, and a variety of bank statements. He has with him here today Carrie Davis, who is Operations Manager. Is that correct? Operations. Okay. All right. And we actually saw some of this presented in one of the intern presentations today as well, and some techniques. So if we could have Andy and Carrie join us here for just a moment to tell us about some transitions that they have undertaken. And Anant, if you can help guide me, I guess, to their...
We don't have any slides.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
We'll try to make it quick for you.
Unless you want us to make up something.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, no, we wanted to keep your attention focused on us, so. I'm going to start out, and then Andy's going to take over with a little more detail. I'm going to cut mine a little bit. I'm mostly going to talk right now about some initiatives in process improvement that we've put through using lean tools. I was going to talk a little bit more about the cards. We've done a lot of improvements on those to help streamline the process. Our batches have gone from 50, 100,000 piece runs. Clients are wanting more diversification, more card styles, so we're doing smaller runs with different colors, different tipping colors, which is the foil that goes on to the embossed, the raised print. So we've had to take several different clients and different processes and combine those into a single feed stream and find ways to improve, make small runs run a little bit larger. Other ways we've cut those down a little bit is when we can't combine different jobs, we set them up based on tipping colors and days so that even though they're doing a small run, they don't have to do as many changeovers during the run. One big improvement we've been doing over the last year has been actually with our mailing and our meters. We're going from actually putting the meter stamp on the mail, which costs us right now about 9 cents for every 1,000, to having a permit indicia where it just says postage paid, permit number, XYZ. That costs us about a half a cent per 1,000, and we also don't have to buy a $17,000 to $21,000 meter, so we're saving our overhead costs on equipment, and it also speeds the whole process of the mail going through. After it's inserted, it skips a whole step of being metered. So that's just kind of a nutshell of what we're doing, since I don't want to take up too much time since we're running behind.
Great. Well, how many people here get excited by hearing just about lean tools and those kind of projects that we just talked about? You get real excited, feel really great inside. Just want to jump out of your seat and give each other high fives. I know I don't, and that's the approach that I came at this from. I came at this saying, hey, I'm willing to learn anything, but ultimately it's got to deliver results. I'm willing to apply for a grant, I'm willing to put this training to work, but ultimately I need to see results. And that's what my leadership has tasked me with getting results. And so when I saw this slide earlier, it says, what can we learn from high performers? That's another thing I love. I love observance, because when you're observing something, you don't have to get too philosophical about it. You can observe it and say, this is that. You know, this is what's happening. This is what I see. You don't have to have a lot of analysis behind it. What I'm recognizing is when he talks about high performers, this is what I'm seeing in our own company. And I'm not seeing it in our company because of the efforts of Carrie. Sorry, Carrie. I'm not seeing it in the company because of my efforts, although we do play a part in it. I'm seeing it because of the people that we have employed. I couldn't say more positive things about the people of Indiana, being a 4-year resident of Indiana, coming from Michigan, having lived in a number of different states with the military. I can't say enough about how people in Indiana embrace what's going on in the workplace and how they're the people that actually deliver those results. We've partnered with the Department of Workforce Development and delivered almost $400,000 worth of lean training through the Purdue Technical Assistance Program over the last 2 years. That's yielded over $500,000 worth of real bottom line savings that my CFO has validated in my facility. Now last year that was great. Things were wonderful. We're tracking for double-digit growth. That's what everybody's talking about. All the buzzwords are in place. Everything's happening the way it's supposed to happen. This year, different thing. 2 major clients pull back big projects. Wow. How are our projects gonna look this year? How's that savings gonna come across? Will the CFO validate it? How are we gonna be able to be a viable entity in the long term? What's the market look like for what we do? You know, we partner with banks. We send out bank cards. We want people to charge things. You ever see Jim Cramer telling you go charge anything? What's Dave Ramsey gonna tell you? You know, they're kind of fighting against the model that the bank's trying to push. And we're the guys that are providing the interface for people to do what they want you to do, and what some people need to do to run their businesses. And so, by partnering with the Department of Workforce Development, putting that grant on the bottom line, this year, not only with those 2 clients leaving and taking over $1 million worth of revenue, not only will we hit our budget numbers that we've targeted to hit for this year, but that's going to represent 27% year-over-year growth for us as well, in revenue and net operating profit. And so those are the kind of things that Lean delivers. When times are great, I'm racking up $470,000 worth of savings on different projects. I'm tying it back to it. When times get tough, and you're partnering with the agencies around here that have your best interest, have the economic impact of Indiana, their best interest, they're sharing these statistics with you. Those statistics are real. I'm here to testify that they're real, and that I see it every day when I go into the workplace. And we do give high fives, and we do get excited, but we get excited about the results. We get excited about the results that come from partnering with the right organizations at the right time and engaging in the right behaviors when it's appropriate. And those results come. When times are great, you get better results. When times are awful, you continue to get the results that you're on target to get. And so I can't say enough about that partnership. One of the things that's helped us too is that investment in people. You look at your equipment. I can tell you how much money I put into equipment over the last year. We put $3.5 million in equipment. But what can you say how much you invested in the people in your company? Equipment's an asset. I got a depreciation schedule. I know how much it's worth at any given time. I can tell you 6 months after I purchase it. I can tell you what it's going to be worth as a projection in a year and a half. What about the people that you employ? What are they worth to you? Let me give you a scenario. Tomorrow your building floods. All your equipment's destroyed. Can you go buy new equipment, put the same people in front of new machinery, and get those results? I think you can. Tomorrow a flood. All your equipment's fine. It's bolted to the floor, but it kills all your people. Can you go out and put brand new people in front of all that old equipment that you had and start producing a product? How long is it going to take you? You can't do it. It's going to be a long time, and when you do it, it won't be the same product that you had before. You lost too much with those people. So we started looking at our people as an investment. We started investing in our people. We started providing them with skills that they need to interact with one another, that they need to break down the silos between departments, and that they need to implement the lean tools and hold each other accountable. And what we've done is, some of you might have heard of Vital Smarts, the folks that do crucial conversations. We have another module, crucial confrontations. And then third, influencer, the power to change anything. We've been investing in people at all levels in our company where it's appropriate. We'll go with the core managers group of 12 for this. Crucial confrontations, it's more data-based in hitting people with expectations being missed, gaps in expectations versus performance. So we hit our supervisors and those folks. Anybody have some change agents? You wonder why something's succeeding or failing? We get involved with this. The money that we've been able to get through the grant to pay for the lean training has freed up other funds that we've decided to invest in our people. And the way we've been investing in our people is through developing those communication skills, developing those talents that they need in order to enable the change that we need to see to be a viable entity into the future. So I'll take this offline. If anybody is interested in talking about the way we've done that, how we've turned that corner, what the impact that lean has had on our facilities been, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. But ultimately, when you think about it, it's all about results. Why do you do anything? Because you want to see results. You want to have good relationships. You want to make more money. Those are the kind of things that we want to see. So we're very focused on results, but behaviors get results, and people enact in behaviors. So we take it back to the beginning. What's the most important thing you have in the four walls of your company? Your people. They go home every night with a feeling about you, and I think that if they go home with a good feeling and they come back with a good feeling, you're going to do a better job. If you equip them with the skills that they need, they're going to use those skills, and ultimately you're going to get the results. And so with that, I'll turn it back over. Thanks, Don, and thanks to Dr. Iyer. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Let's keep the session going. Tim, take your time. We'll adjust our schedule. So I'd like to invite Tim to talk about Terex. I'll just pull up the presentation. While you do that.
Yeah, thanks. I saw another slide in there, so.
Okay. So Tim here is the Senior Vice President for Supply Chain Management at Terex Corporation. He's responsible for establishing a company-wide supply chain management and strategic sourcing process. We're very fortunate that he arranged the schedule to be here because, as Mary was saying, he's not in control of his schedule, so he's all over the place. It's one of the things that we've tried to do is Terex just signed on as a partner, as a sponsor of the center, and we're looking forward to them playing a role both in providing some direction to many of the efforts we're doing, as well as hearing about many of the interesting things happening there. So,
Great, thanks very much. Okay, so which side is the ups and downs? Okay, so thanks for having me here, both peers and students, and I think this is going to drive an interesting conversation. We just heard from Ted about how globalization has really impacted his business, and the keynote of the discussion I'm going to have with you is how Terex is responding to the globality of the steel business, what we're having to do to make sure that we remain competitive in the future. That's really the discussion that I want to have with you. But in the meantime, most people really don't know what Terex is, what they do. If you've gone through the package there, you probably have some idea. But we're basically a builder, designer and builder of equipment. Equipment that lifts things, equipment that digs things, equipment that moves things along. It's a great company. It's fairly young. It's only been around for about 20 years. Some of our brand names are legacy businesses that have been around for many, many, many years. But Terex as an organization has only been around for about 20 years. We had our genesis with a spin-off out of General Motors about 20 years ago. So the company itself is about $10+ billion worth of revenue. We spend about $7.3 billion supporting that business. So we have a high percent to spend to sales ratio. Of that $7.3 billion, there's about $6.3 billion worth of direct material that we buy. And just as a point of reference, we're spending around $2.5 billion a year on direct and indirect steel. So with that in mind, when I get to the end here about the example, you're going to understand why it's significant for us to keep up with the steel business. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Terex. I'll talk a little bit about the global organization that I'm deploying. I've been in the job for a little over a year. Before that, Terex did not have a global sourcing, global supply management function. So my task was to come in and look at how the businesses are laid out, come up with an organizational strategy, deploy a strategic sourcing concept, and make progress towards saving a bunch of money. And Also keep in mind that our competition of the world, the CATs, the Komatsu's, Deere's construction business and stuff, they've been doing this kind of thing for a long time. So we're really trying to catch up. And the corollary of that is that the supply market that supplies us all has seen all of this before. So, it's the follower concept where if you're the first mover, you kind of can surprise things, but when you're following, people kind of have their defenses up and they know how to respond, which makes it real interesting. And my last point is I'm going to talk about the supply chain, steel supply chain activity that we're trying to respond to as a result of really a global steel business. Let's see if this goes. Thanks for watching that.
Good work.
Okay, move back a little bit. Okay, great, that's good. All right, so just to give you a feel for where Terex sits in the construction business, we consider ourselves number 3, and the numbers you see up there, CAT's much bigger than 30 million, but we're only counting the business that competes with our businesses. Komatsu and Deere are the same. We're about number 3, and we've grown pretty dramatically here. Let's just use the other one.
It's a skip. It's good.
There we go. Brown comes in. So we've, it's okay, we've grown pretty dramatically over the last 5-6 years. The company really changed significantly in 2002 when we made the purchase of a company called Genie, located out in Redmond, Washington. They make aerial work platforms, and we purchased a company called DMAG that makes pretty high-tech cranes located in Zweibrück in Germany. So a really good growth profile here. Our stated objectives, I believe they still are our stated objectives, is to get to $12 billion in revenue, 12% return on sales by 2010. Like in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it's been quite a roller coaster ride. Just quickly here, we make machines. And this division, about $2.5–2.6 billion division, makes machines that lift people and move people. Its basic location is in Redmond, Washington. They really practice lean manufacturing to the nth degree. They've been doing it for about 12 years. Really good example of how to really flow material. And it's really, its core competency is material flow and teamwork. They really grasp the total production system and have executed it well. And we've taken that knowledge and deployed it across the rest of our businesses. Our construction sector is probably our weakest sector. We make big trucks, 100-ton trucks. We make excavators, 20–30-ton excavators. We make mini excavators. We make material handling equipment that lifts up scrap and lumber and deposits it. Some pretty decent technology in there. And we make some compact equipment too that the landscaping business uses quite a bit. The basic manufacturing capability for our construction business, though, is really Europe. So our Genie product is made in the U.S. The construction stuff is made in Europe. The cranes business, we have a good, strong base here in the U.S., located in Iowa, but the majority of the business is in Europe. And we make all-terrain cranes, we make rough terrain cranes, we make big crawler cranes, a lot of technology in these vehicles. Some of the stuff going over the road has 11, 12 axles on it because of the weight requirements. In the mining business, we make big shovels, and we make big trucks, and we make drills. And that's located both in Germany and in the U.S. We also have another piece of the business making crushing and screening equipment that is used in the construction business, quarrying business, and so on. So to give you a feel how global we are, we're kind of all over the place. But the biggest presence is really in Europe, in Germany, and in the UK, and in Northern Ireland. And with that comes legacy companies that are dealing through works councils and legacy HR issues and such, and the ability to redesign this manufacturing footprint in the short term is limited. And there's a new management team really in place at Terex to look at leveraging all of these very good brands to really position ourselves for the future. So from a supply management standpoint, I've been in the job now for a little over a year. What we're really trying to do is get the foundation set, get the process in place, get the people in place, get the concepts, get the teamwork going, get people cooperating. There's about 25 or 30 significant manufacturing plants around the world. Each one of those operate independently for all of its existence. And for an organization to come in now and provide a sourcing leadership function, it tends to be a bit threatening. So a lot of what my group does, and there's about 50 some odd people in the group, our job is to get people to not feel threatened to collaborate with their neighbors down the street or in another country, source and spend effectively so that we can get more for our money. And keep in mind, our competition is way out ahead of us. We set up a roadmap, the important things to do in the near term. If you look at the foundation there, that kind of describes what the first year and a half's activity has been. To set up a strong category management strategy, understand where our spend is, who we're spending it with, and why. Operate and collaborate cross-functionally with engineering, quality, finance, and supply management. And then to understand how well our suppliers actually perform for us. Another interesting point of the Terex environment today is that we have 25 to 30 significant plants. We have 20 to 22 different ERP, MRP systems. So gathering information from this network is not very easy. The way we're structured from a supply management standpoint is this is the leadership of the supply management function across Terex. So it's not overwhelming. Many of these individuals have dotted line relationships with the plants underneath them. It's not like there's direct control. I'm not in a position where I control the sourcing decisions at 25 plants around the world. My job is to influence that decision, getting the plants to collaborate and make the right decision for their plants and for the whole company. And generally with this group of people and organizations you see here, they're in the same role as I am. So it's a massive collaboration issue. And from a change management standpoint, at Terex, my function is the first function that has actually intruded in the operations, the day-to-day operations of each one of these plants. So it's not like there's another function that's gone before us. We're out there blazing the trail and showing people how working together has benefit for everyone. I'm organized by spend categories. So steel, hydraulics, electrical, mechanical, transportation, indirect. So the way I'm organized is really around supply markets. So what we try to do is take the input from the business functions, the divisions, and address the market as one company. And you can see, as I mentioned, we're spending $7.3 billion to spend. 2.5 billion of that, 2.8 billion is in the steel, castings, and fabrications area. And that's really the focus of my discussion. We've got some aspirational metrics out here. Some of these we can't measure. We can measure cost. For instance, right now, even with the steel environment that we face with, we're running about minus 2.8, 2.9 to our last price paid in 2007. We have a very significant data warehouse that we run up in Northern Ireland that gives us the ability to see what we're paying every month for stuff and compare it against the prior baseline, which is a real strong advantage for us. The rest of the stuff is very hard to measure because you really need to get into the daily receipt information, on-time deliveries, quality deficiencies, and frankly, right now we don't have those. We are deploying an Oracle platform, and it'll be a couple of years before we'll have useful information out of that will reflect maybe 40, 50% of our volumes. We also have a sourcing process we put in place, not rocket science. Understand what you're buying and why, your future needs, understand what the supply market looks like, understand who you're doing business with now, understand what you really want for the future, define it structurally, get it out there to the market, have people respond, negotiate through to a solution, implement it, and improve it over time. Nothing really earth-shattering here. And we've also deployed a series of tools. I mentioned the database that we have operating in Northern Ireland is called eCost. It has a subcomponent called GBT. But at the eCost level, we can understand where we're spending our money with who. We can put it into this Terex sourcing tool so we can collaborate across all these sites around the world. We can make sourcing decisions, put it into the Terex planning tool that allows us to do a step-by-step planning of first piece acceptance, tool and prove out, first article evaluation, PPAP, the whole thing, and then implementation. And then the GBT piece allows us to measure where we are against the prior baseline. So the tools are all in place. All right, so let me talk about the real focus of this in terms of manufacturing change and manufacturing excellence. The steel market in the world has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. There's been lots of consolidation. There's fewer players in the world. And because of big ocean liners, 4,000 container ships, the ability to move material around the world, the WTO, the dropping of basically tariffs and duties, steel is now essentially an international commodity. So where the price is strong for steel, that's where steel goes. And when it goes that way, prices go up where it's left. And what you're seeing here is what happened to the steel market in the last 6 years. And I'm showing you Europe, and I think Europe is yellow. I'm showing you red, which is North America, and I'm showing you blue, which is China. And I think there's numbers on here. Yeah, there is. So you can see right now, even with the decline in Chinese steel in the last couple of months, the decline will occur on the red line, which is the US. You're looking at almost a 50% difference here in market price for the same kind of steel. The only difference is you have to get it to where you're going to use it. So if you look at this chart, this is plate steel. We use a lot of plate steel. Somewhere around 70% of our steel is plate. There's usually plate, there's hot rolled, and there's long products. We use plate, we use some hot rolled. With that kind of a gap, you can see how Chinese manufacturing has an advantage over us in the US. And you cannot ignore that advantage for long. Now, China does tend to throw some protections on their steel. They have what's called VAT, and up until recently, you were able to recover that VAT. If you export it, you cannot recover it anymore. So what China's trying to do is keep the steel within China, but they're not being successful. China has 35% of the world's steel-making capacity now. If you looked at it 6 years ago, it was more like 15%. So it's a real power to be reckoned, and with our competition, the cats and the deers and the commodities around the world, they're not ignoring the fact that Chinese steel is half of what it is in the US and Europe. You can see what's happened to coil, hot rolled coil. You can see the red line is the US, so hot rolled coil in the US is dropping quickly, thank God. The thing that you're not really seeing here, and I'm not pointing out, is what happened to steel in the last 6 months before the drop-off. A company like us, with that kind of increase in cost, could be $200 to $300 million worth of profit loss annually. That's how serious that kind of a rise up. If it stayed that way without dropping off, we could be looking at somewhere around 35 to 40% loss in our margins. That's serious business. That's real serious business. So this chart really just shows the percent change over a period of time. I wanted to show you those two prior charts. They're not in your book. I plugged them in last night because I had those put together yesterday. And what that's really showing you is absolute dollars. $600 for a short ton of plate versus $1,200. That's serious stuff. This shows you percent change against a nominal back in 2007. Doesn't show you the dramatic issue that the other chart does. But what this does tell you on the right-hand side is that India and China steel markets are basically being managed to keep a fairly constant level of steel price. And the big reason for that is because they want to invest in infrastructure. They don't want to bankrupt their own country because steel's gone up and they're exporting steel to places like us. So they do tend to try to keep the price constant. And in Europe and the US, we basically have open borders. So we spend a bunch of money on steel. And some of the steel that we buy is basically plate steel has been cut out of sheets, and they're called pre-cuts or burnouts. And we take those pre-cuts and burnouts and we put them into jigs, and we weld them up and we make structures. And it's a low value add, low capital intensity process that we essentially have outsourced to many companies around both in Europe and the US. And they do this function for us. So what we're really trying to do here is make sure that for a ton of steel, we pay some markup above that ton of steel for the value add portion. And you go through this value chain, and you can see blasting and transport, receiving and handling. Those are not really high value add, high labor intensive, high quality labor intensive operations. So what you'd want to do is you'd want to get somewhere around maximum 50% markup on top of the raw steel to get into your facility. So this is a big piece of our steel input for the U.S. $200 million of the steel comes into our facilities in the U.S. in this fashion. Now, if the biggest piece of the component here is raw steel, 67–70% of raw steel, and you're buying this at a disadvantage of 50% to the Chinese steel market, you can see what that means in terms of profit loss. So we executed a pretty extensive action plan to address what's really going on here in the steel market in the U.S. and what can we really do globally. We're getting closer to our mills. We're making sure that our pre-cut companies here in the U.S. provide total disclosure in terms of steel costs to us, because in the past, when steel was fairly constant, it wasn't really that big of a deal of how much their price included steel. But when steel starts moving up, the steel starts moving down and you're adjusting prices on a quarterly basis, you better know what the steel cost is in those components. So we've executed a plan to make sure we have that understanding. With transportation prices dropping around the world, around the US, road freight is